afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Rutgers and our series of colloquiums around topics of common interest. We welcome you this afternoon. And I am Dr. Julie Johnson, the Director of Continuing and Professional Studies. Today we have with us Michael Sharonson, who is the Executive Vice President at SCG. He also serves as the Chief Public Relations Counselor and Strategist. He has served the public relations community in a variety of capacities, including as Chair and CEO of PRSA. He also serves as the co-academic director of communication certificates within Continuing and Professional Studies. Additionally, we have Ken Hunter. He is the President and Chief Strategist of Public Relations and Marketing Communication Consultancy at Power Station Communication. He too serves as our co-academic director with Mike for communication certificates here at CPS. We have Jennifer Sunday. She is a global asset DAM specialist with a deep focus on governance and compliance within DAM, and we are delighted to have her with us. And finally, we have David Lipsey. He is a DAM industry strategist and DAM industry foundational contributor. He serves as the co-academic director of DAM certificates here at CPS, and I'm going to turn this over to David. Welcome, everyone.
Julie, thanks so much. We gather today to discuss issues which are of keen interest and complex in nature. As digital, broadly defined, has unfolded, we've all developed accommodation structures to assimilate untold, countless, and ever new ways of being with digital. Some years, no, make that some weeks, we feel as if realizing the Earth is not the center of the universe, the Earth is not flat, we can fly around the Earth, and we can see the Earth from the moon, all just happened yesterday in digital. We experience this compression of time regardless of age and generation of socialization. Digital invokes a two-way relationship that we now manage with it, not with people. A common example, yesterday's New York Times had a fascinating story about this bidirectional relationship with common infrastructure. The story was entitled, "Free Electricity, Anyone? Britain Tries New Tricks to Green Its Grid," about the utilities which send phone alerts whenever the wind power is cheap. Open the app, plug in the car, start the dryer. We actually have a name for this. We call it the smart grid, referring to embedded intelligence, if you will, that triggers event-based actions. Some of these are useful, like it's cheaper to charge the car now. Some still seem cute, like the refrigerator reminding me that my goat's milk is low and it puts it on a grocery list. And some are just goofy, like remind me to put my pet rock under the grow light and turn on the classical music. We extend this today to include a bidirectional relationship with content. And yes, we do call this content on the smart grid. No more do we open the doors of our homes to read in common the social experience of the newspaper, nor do we alloy social bonds through watching the news. Instead, the smart grid creates a fractal universe, dissembling common experience, and digital brought this to our doorsteps, ambiguity in the meaning of truth. We might even ask, in fact, who put this little baby on the doorstep? Gee, thanks. In this week's New Yorker, Nathan Heller writes about ambient information and noted, I quote, "Many of us scroll through social networks, stream information into our eyes and ears, and struggle to recall where we picked up this or that data point and how we assembled the broad concepts that we hold and discuss." The science historian Michael Shermer, in his book, The Believing Brain, uses the term patternicity to describe the way that people search for patterns, many of them erroneous, on the basis of small information samplings, close quote. It's a fascinating article, and I highly recommend it. Perhaps on a scale that rivals nothing else, digital invokes fear, uncertainty, and the persistence of suspicion that now utterly pervades us. The collapse of time as a form of annealing truth continues to corrode countless social norms and the capacity to find truth and build society from this. The blistering speed of information that can help a doctor in a faraway land instantly view a life saving surgical procedure can also find instantaneously a vicious or doctored social media post that brings mob violence. No form of digital can escape this malevolent intention. As well, for every action we take to defend against digital malfeasance, there is an equal and opposite reaction to create the next intrusion, mis or disinformation, and more. While this is a somewhat depressing update of Newton's third law of motion, is a fact and is, simply put, core to our world of content, data authentication, and governance. I use this to transition to our colloquium today to give insights in this age of uncertainty and how to get the words digital and truth on the same side of the ledger. We'll set a broad context for these issues with a well-known strategist and leader in public relations, a highly accomplished digital asset management advanced practitioner, and our third speaker, an acclaimed public relations and crisis communications expert. Our audience today blends professionals from around the world and from both of these worlds. And we'll ask Jen Sunday, our digital asset management leader, to show how DAM creates vital bridges to address our topic and confront these issues with resolve and affirmative outcome. To save Jen a little bit of time, many of you may not be too familiar with the phrase digital asset management. Put simply, a digital asset has three atomic parts: the ones and zeros, the computer code, that make up the digital images, graphics, audio, and video files we use every day, the metadata that describes these binary objects and enables search, which we do every day, and the rights that govern permission to use the asset. From the label on a beverage that you may have sitting on your desk, to whatever you might be watching on Netflix or Disney Plus or any streaming channel, to YouTube videos, to the process that create a book that you are reading or listening to, all are chock full of digital assets. Here at Rutgers, we offer professional education and certification in crisis management, in public relations, in digital asset management, creative operations, and more. And as with our program today, with an affirmed belief in lifelong learning, a passion for the question that life and digital always bring, what's next? And with that question in mind, Ken, I'm pleased to introduce you and turn the colloquium over to you. Welcome, Ken Hunter.
Well, thanks a lot, David, and it was good to be able to hear a tie-in about pet rocks. I hope they're making a comeback. With my remarks today, I'm going to be introducing the scope of the communication and reputational impact to your organization that's involving digital suspicion. Now, do you remember seeing this now infamous image from Hurricane Helene's aftermath? And that was just a couple of months ago. But when you first saw it, think of some of the words that came to mind. It was probably very touching, maybe heartbreaking, sadness, anger. Well, it turns out the image is fake. It was created through artificial intelligence. Now, some of the ways that people have been trying to detect if it's an AI image is you could look at the girl's fingers. Are there, 10 of them? Are the knuckles in the right place? Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. But there's some telltale signs that when you're used to looking for them, it'll be a little bit more evident if something might be, a little off or not quite authentic. However, think of if you were, say, working for FEMA or working for one of the organizations, an aid group, what they would have had to have done once you had an image like this go out. You probably had, a fair amount of scrambling, trying to show we're taking care of people, here's everything we've done. But all that does is really diverts attention from helping people to having to tell about how this is a fake image, it's not real. So it can cause you a lot of problems if you're one of the organizations involved in that. Another problem that compounds it, look at this if it was on a cell phone. How many people are going to, actually zoom in real tight and study, is this possibly fake? Probably not many, but knowing that more than half of the audience saw this on a cell phone compounds your problem. So you have to realize that AI images can affect your perception, your reputation. They can be manipulative, and they're made to generate emotion in many cases. At least in this situation, it was. So by diverting your resources and having to respond, that again, I'll reinforce, takes the attention away from what your core mission is. When you take a look here at some of the definitions and issues that people are very concerned with, political violence, disinformation is a major threat, people thinking they see misinformation every week. These are the sorts of things that you have to deal with. Now, it doesn't matter if you're a governmental organization or a private company. These all apply. People are starting to really have, almost a chip on their shoulder when they see news come out, especially visual news, trying to determine what's real, what's not. There are two types of information that we'll cover here. First is misinformation. Look at that as just false. It can include human error. It's not necessarily malicious, but it'll have an aspect that isn't true. Versus disinformation, which is what people view as the little more sinister area, is it has intent. It's purposeful that the wrong information has been put out there. It's getting a lot more sophisticated as well. False personas, you hear a lot about that. Even in areas such as reviews for a particular product or company. You could have bad actors that put up lots of negative reviews, but also sometimes organizations will, go and use bots to put up positive reviews of a product or service. Also, deep fakes are, kind of the issue du jour because they've gotten very sophisticated and good. And then also you'll have trolls, be thinking of memes in areas like that. Also, maybe somebody goes and creates a video of a rat running through a restaurant. It may be 100% false, but it'll damage that restaurant's reputation. A key thing you need to think through is that public relations within an organization tends to be a gatekeeper when it comes to ethics. A lot of times we're kind of the voice of the customer. We are the ones that are telling the organization, if you do A, B is going to happen and B is not good. Think about your own organizational cultures. Do you have manipulation in fundraising? For instance, if you use the picture of the girl on the boat to raise money for your nonprofit, I don't know, is that something within the organizational culture you should raise your hand about? Also, too, providing the feeling that the public supports or opposes issue X. Those can be areas where you see a lot of manipulation with digital images as well. So as public relations people, we should always be focused on the transparency, letting people know the content is real. Now, you don't necessarily have to post, this content is real, but if you're using AI, and we'll cover some of the areas where it is a benefit, you have to make sure people understand that. And it could be a little disclaimer underneath your picture or in your comments or something. But above all, what we're trying to do as PR people in this atmosphere is to help aid informed decision making. Now, we may think our product or service is fantastic. We're trying to go and provide other people the feeling that, yes, it's fantastic, but let them come to their conclusion. And a key part of this is embracing digital asset management, which is, for all the communication people on our meeting today, this may be a new field or a new topic that you first heard of today. But for others, you may not have a clear sense of what it is. Now, AI is just the latest tool. In the quote, old days, people be able to use a penknife to cut around an image, maybe glue somebody into a picture that they weren't part of, or use fine pens to go and craft things. Also Photoshop. I mean, this I pulled from, that's actually a fantasy football trophy that I won. But, when Kate and Will had their first baby, that's what she was carrying. But I actually had an intern with this together a dozen years ago. And again, it looks real, like she's carrying that trophy. But then also you have an area of government propaganda as well. There will be, the quote, bad actors that can create images and videos that are meant to steer people in a certain direction. You'll even find AI really in common usage areas. This is one that, we pulled from Adobe stock, which we could have just gone and used, let's say, in something to promote this colloquium. But it's not identified in Adobe stock as being AI. And when you take a look at the picture on the left, on a quick glance, you say, oh, okay, looks like a woman in some lab working on her computer. Then you get closer. You'll see she has several extra eyeballs. Then down at the bottom, she has some of her eyeballs on her wrist, where the computer keyboard keys should be, up where her camera is. So you look at that and say, well, okay, if I zoomed in real close, then I'll see this. But if I'm just quickly going through it, I won't. Some of the earlier areas where we saw, pre-AI is, from the Soviet Union. This falls into, the propaganda area. And this is one of the, famous pictures. The person on the right side was one of Stalin's secret police people, and he fell out of favor. So what they did was manipulated the image, took the person out as if he didn't even exist. At the end of World War II, Battle of Berlin, when the Soviets were raising their flag over the Reichstag, these were manipulated images too. So the one in the top left corner is what that initial image was. But then right underneath that, you can see in the circle that there was a soldier with two arms holding the soldier, steadying him who's holding up the flag. One of the things the Soviets did when they zoomed in, they saw there was a wristwatch on both hands of that soldier, and they didn't want the public to think that they were looting during the war. So what they did was digitally, or well, not digitally at that time, but used, the pen, the knife, the ink to take out one of those wristwatches. Also, when you look at the image on the right, which was the final image, you can see they enhanced the smoke off in the distance to go and give the, a little bit more of an emotional feeling and what the victory meant. You may think, well, this is really major stuff, but can it happen to me? Maybe you don't work at a large organization, but think of somebody manipulating an image. There could be, let's say, a former employee who didn't like the CEO and went and put that person in some controversial t-shirt or hat. I talked about the rat, the customer video with a rat running through a restaurant. But they could also create deepfake video of somebody on your team sharing secrets with a competitor and treat it as if it was a hidden camera sting. So with that, that's why it's important to make sure you do have a crisis communication plan, because when this stuff happens, it's very difficult to catch your breath and have everybody get on the same sheet. That's why you need to do this a little bit earlier. Now, on the other side, we don't always have to be serious when it comes to AI. You think of things such as memes. You take a look at this picture, a guy happening to be stepping on a Lego, and it gives that feeling of, geez, he was with Taylor Swift and stepped on a Lego? But it's just humorous. You've probably seen a lot of memes lately where it's, plays off of current events, and you say, this is just entertaining. I know it's made up, but it's just funny. You can also use AI images for storytelling. Your organization is launching a new product or service, let's say, and to be able to show use cases. How are people using our product? If you're not able to go and get original photography of it, you could use AI. However, it'd be important to have transparency, to note somewhere that this is an AI image. And the entertainment value is very important. So for instance, you remember with Forrest Gump, in that movie, there were multiple scenes where he was inserted into historical events, but one with John Lennon, where he's doing the Dick Cavett show, what they did was really superimpose Tom Hanks over Yoko Ono, and they were coming up with the words for the song Imagine. So all created in the studio. Thinking of ways that you can ethically use these, quote, digital lies in PR is possible. Now, some organizations take a zero tolerance policy. You absolutely cannot use anything generated by AI. Now, keep in mind, I just showed you that Adobe stock image of the woman who was the scientist by a computer. And all of those, you would think those should be safe to use. I'm not creating something. Well, it depends how they're used. Now, a zero tolerance policy might initially be attractive. However, it's not going to help you in the reputational management end if it's zero tolerance. True that you don't want to have, for instance, your sales teams creating their own AI images trying to, demonstrate your product without having an appropriate oversight. But as a communication professional, this is an area where you may tend to have to try to have a little more influence with your organization if they have zero tolerance. So make sure, label it, be incredibly obvious. And here's an example. In the UK, there is a casino website called Mr. Q. And a few weeks back, they completed a study of what does a typical cheater, as in someone that cheats on their significant other, look like. They interviewed lots of people to go and get ideas of physical characteristics. They fed it into AI and came up with these images. You would say, oh boy, so that's what a typical cheater looks like in the UK? But why on earth would a gambling site care about that? So what they did, though, they tied that blog post in with, rather than playing games with your partner, why not play some of our online slot games? So if you think about it, if you're a communication pro or a marketer, there is a market for this, to be able to create these sorts of kind of infographics, informational pieces. Now, videos have gotten very sophisticated. I'd like to show this one briefly so you can see.
Portrait photograph of Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, taken in 1865 by Alexander Garner, 2 months before his death.
So you could see with that, that's, a very good job. And somebody that just comes across this and looks at it, watches it. I mean, sure, they'll know that Abe Lincoln wasn't around for color video. However, think about it. Could be an executive at your company that's put into this sort of image. It could be some top official at a governmental agency. So there's a lot of risk. So countering mis and disinformation, there are, multiple ways you can do it, which Mike Charenson will talk about those in a bit. The main one I want to focus on is the last one. Make ethics and transparency a priority. That's crucial. If your organization is using AI, there are lots of benefits for it, and from the visual aspect in particular. However, if you're not open and transparent about it, your publics are going to lose trust in your organization. Very critical that you, as a PR person, keep an eye on this and are a guardian. So next up is going to be Jen Sunday, and she'll talk about how to mitigate some of the issues that digital asset management can help solve or prevent. So in conclusion, the key things I'd like you to take away: monitor your landscape, make sure you know what's happening, what's going on, what might be impacting your organization. Make sure you understand the ethics of using AI and responding to it. And then lastly, be prepared. So with that, I will now turn things over to Jen.
Well, thank you, Ken. I appreciate that. And hello, everyone. I just want to say thank you for the Rutgers leaders and team to have me be part of this colloquium. A little bit of background about myself. I have about 13 plus years experience as an advanced dam practitioner who started my career off as a dam coordinator. And the basics of a dam coordinator is uploading assets and filling out the metadata within the system. And I started at the basics for dam. Then I was able to transition to leading more dam work across multiple teams and implemented system implementations and integrations with IT, such as CMS systems, PIM systems, which is content management system, product information systems, and also project management tools. And I have a cool accolade. I have built the dam from the ground up twice in 25 weeks, both times. But I am not a back-end script developer. I more engage with those team members, and that has been a staple in my dam journey to establish working relationships with multiple people across multiple areas. And I have done all the dam related tasks, even tasks that may not seem like dam, including governance, trainings, metadata management, system documentation, policies, processes, and project management, system administration, and now coming into more of an enterprise-based dam operations role. And currently, I am the strategic governance owner that oversees compliance and governance across multiple business areas that are under the corporate marketing umbrella. And I lead the Content Operations Governance Council. And this role has provided opportunities to explore and expand the governance alignment across many business areas, including content operations, marketing, legal, and IT, just to name a few, while taking a proactive approach to content and data quality, focusing on bringing awareness and responsibility to all within the governance community. And DAM is the source of truth for all digital assets, which David spoke to earlier, which means that DAM can be used for numerous purposes, including as a retention platform for policies and emergency response operations, evacuation plans, and even training and procedural documents. And the list goes on how DAM can be used. But DAM is not only where the assets are stored, it is the main source of master metadata management. And it is the centerpiece for how we govern our assets and align processes across business areas. And this is where DAM governance starts to break down the silos and starts building trust between business departments like legal, IT, and marketing, and other areas, and prepares our companies to navigate through that murky world of digital truth and AI manipulation, and provides a path to the brighter world of digital provenance and content authenticity. Now, the assets held and utilized within your dam are specifically up to the governing body to provide guidelines and regulations that suit your company's needs. And to understand how we proactively defend ourselves from mis or disinformation, the governance committee is tasked with the overall adherence of content and data governance as it relates to preparing the dam to receive the most trustworthy information. And note, I just used the phrase to receive. DAM does not natively originate or authenticate content. Hence, the critical role that governance has across a content supply chain or digital asset supply chain. And the difference between content and data governance is that content governance is the set of guidelines on how an organization's content gets created and published. And data governance is the policies, processes, procedures, people, and technologies that ensure accountability and ownership across the organization. And one of the things I have done over a 13-year career in DAM to build the bridges between content and data governance is to continually understand the workflows from the beginning of the content creation lifecycle through the ingestion into the DAM to where the content goes and interacts with our customers. And this requires oversight and understanding of how the processes align. And by having this understanding, we are building in protection against misinformation within our systems and allowing us to provide the appropriate and governed sources of truth assets that are reliable, reusable, and relevant to our end users' needs. And by doing so, we are building that trust and that reputation that attracts and retains customers, staff, and supporters. And looking at this from a holistic point of view, I focus on building community of leaderships, leaders within the DAM community and the governance committees. And these leaders can be in different area partners, they can be subject matter experts, and even management. But our consistent focus is on ownership within the governance committee itself. And as I build these leaders into the system, into the governance committees, I like to think of the governance partnerships as being part of a soccer team. And I'll take a little journey with me. I'd like each of you to think of your internal business areas as a player on a soccer team. Now, think of yourself in your uniform and you're on that field as one of those players on your soccer team. And each of you have a specific role and responsibilities playing a part in relationship to the other players and the opposing team. And the team works together within a strategic and tactical environment to control the ball and move it towards its goal. And this is how we need to model effective content and data governance. And within this framework, we build partnerships by laying out what the roles are. How will we work with each other? Who is accountable for what? What is the strategy and the decision-making for collective action? And as you build your governance program, you will grow that community and learn how to support each other. Just like the soccer player who passes the ball to another player in a better position, you can utilize other team members' skills to support the team's effort and to shape where you want your ball to be headed. And in times of trouble and opportunity, DAM is tethered to the overall compliance and governance practices, corporate ethics, as well as breaking down silos to provide consistent and appropriate content. And DAM is also a tool conduit that can help with rapid response, crisis management, and regulatory audits. Now, we do not purchase a DAM on the expectation for those reasons, but building a DAM team with resilience to repurpose and respond to those needs is inherent to the potential of DAM. But DAM does, from its core architecture, allows itself to be the center of governance operations, kind of like the heart. And leveraging the DAM governance committee to help proactively provide for those instances like that helps set up the working relationship and management through these issues. And tools like the data governance operation model assist in outlining the roles and responsibilities throughout the organization and with that management alignment. And this is the core place where dams can manage up and manages down at the same time. And one of the ways that I get buy-in from team members is to show them how will they be involved and what is being asked of them. And as governance communications, and part of those communications, setting up the roles and responsibilities gives all players enough information to know when to be engaged, when to hand off the ball, and how to move it to its target. And a good way to think of your executive level is as the soccer team owner, and strategic level roles as referees who are aware of issues, surprises, or exceptions, and they will need to make a ruling on them as they arise. The tactical roles are the players on the field, the ones putting in all the effort and the work, and the operational roles are the players on the bench and could even include your fans and anyone else involved in supporting your team. And our DAM team has to be ready to respond to unknown problems in digital, including regulatory issues, misinformation, legal discovery, digital malfeasance. And this is why the roles for the strategic referees are so important, so that we can guide through the unknown surprises to sustain the appropriate governance practices. And an example of AI manipulation or misinformation occurred when I was working for a tool company and we were training the AI application for use in metadata describing our products. And to our surprise and dismay, the tools were being called weapons. And we had to immediately pull down the information and focus on retraining the AI to provide accurate and nonviolent content. And to be able to provide sustainable governance practices, I tend to think of the governance committee more as a project, and I take on the role as the project manager. And part of that role is managing macro governance issues, including budget, strategic planning, and future roadmaps, to micro governance issues, including more day-to-day operations of changes to product names, metadata changes, and additional languages being added to the information within your dam. And also guiding governance. And I say guiding governance on crisis demand issues. For example, what happens when there is an audit? What happens when an asset is not created within the guidelines or processes of the content creation lifecycle? And responding to those calls of action within an appropriate time frame and communication plan. And in my experience, timeliness of responses and setting a cadence for updates or meetings helps team members stay engaged, just like they're still playing on that field and they're not left wondering what you're doing or thinking you're hogging the ball or practicing drills that are not compliant to the team's success. And building that trust within the team, just like building trust between players passing the ball to one another, is invaluable. And overall, I have had success in building trust in challenging environments by putting an emphasis on transparent and thoughtful and appropriate communication, showcasing subject matter expertise from the community by giving them a voice to promote their positions, listening to the team members that we support, and knowing when to throw that yellow flag by exercising thoughtful and appropriate implementation actions, and always showing yourself as being a team player that is open to sharing options or strategic plays to get to the goal. And as Gary Speed said, everybody makes mistakes, but when goalkeepers make them, it is costly. And Mark Lawrenson said, if you are a goalkeeper, it doesn't matter what you save the ball with. If you keep it out, it's not a goal. And in this era where we need to find the digital truth, we can refer to the DAM content owners as goalkeepers that follow governance practices and proactively help us save the ball by keeping deep fakes content out of our dam systems. And as we assert the role of the dam to be the proactive force in defending and protecting content authenticity, the dam practice then becomes our ultimate goal. And now I would like to turn it over to Michael Sharonson.
Thanks a lot, Jen. Let me just share my screen. I think there you go. Share mine. And while I'm posting, going to my slides, just a quick reminder: if you have questions, please pop them into the chat, and we'll be sure to take some of those questions as we progress. Let me just move to my settings here. Okay, there we go. Hopefully everyone can see them. So just by the way, thank you, Ken and David and Julie and the rest. This is really an important topic, especially now more than ever. So, we talked about PR and DAM, and I thought maybe I'd just start with some of the things we share in common, some of the shared values. And both Ken and Jen touched upon this, truthfulness and accuracy to ensure information is accurate and verified before dissemination. That's something that we all hold dear. Transparency, and I think we talked a lot about that. Accountability and take responsibility for the information release and correct mistakes. Respect for the public well-being, and I think this is a really, really important point. Prioritize public welfare over organizational gains. We have an obligation to the decider, to the chooser, to the customer, to the receiver of information. We operate with the permission of our various publics, and I think we always have to remind ourselves of that as communicators and as DAM specialists. Education and advocacy, I think we have an affirmative obligation to promote media literacy and education and educate audiences on misinformation and risks. And that's going to be one of the focuses of my presentation. Certainly vigilance against infiltration, protecting against malicious actors, and ethical use of technology. And we talked about AI both as a tool and potentially a weapon. So I think we we share those values. And a commitment to ethical standards and our various codes of ethics. So I think both the disciplines share those commonalities, and I think that that's a unifying aspect of today's discussion. We talked, Ken spoke a lot about some of the challenges we're seeing in the information landscape and the toxicity and so forth. And what we're seeing now is this weaponization of skepticism. We're the liar's dividend, where the liars are gaining a benefit from all this. People are just simply no longer trusting anything they see. And the slippery slope is, even if they're caught red-handed on video with their hand in the cookie jar, they're going to proclaim that to be a deep fake or a shallow fake. So at a certain point, we won't believe anything. At a certain point, even real authentic videos will be called into question. And then all of our ability to communicate and to operate effectively will be undermined. So I think that this impacts us all. And one of the other challenges we have is this Brandolini's law, also known as, and I'll excuse my French, the bullshit asymmetrical principle. Sadly, the amount of energy needed to refute BS is an order of magnitude bigger than needed to produce it. So in other words, it's a lot easier to create the lie than it is to counter it. We know from various studies that falsehoods will travel farther and faster than truth. There's the interesting but true effect. People will just find falsehoods and the extreme examples just more interesting, and they're often more difficult to challenge. So that certainly makes our job much harder. We talked a lot about the technology of it all and proliferation and how people are feeling about some of these the fact that now we're surrounded by these falsehoods and we're calling into question the things we see. And the question is why? Why do people share? And I'd like to just take a step back. Ken did a good job at the difference between mis and disinformation. I also want to share another difference between the seeding and spreading of falsehoods. And in many ways, it's difficult to stop the seeding. And Jen, I think, did a good job of talking about our affirmative obligation to make sure that we're not seeding the environment with any manipulative content or falsehoods or anything that could be seen as untrue. But one of the bigger challenges today, especially because of social media and that share button, is the sharing of falsehoods. So why do people share? We all scratch our heads like, what are you thinking? And I think there's a couple key drivers. And I think as professional communicators and as damn specialists, I think we have to understand the psychology of the end user. So you've got intuitive thinking. There's just a lack of critical thinking. People just lack, some of the basic, the things that multiple things can be true at once, or, to question certain aspects of it. So there's that intuitive thinking. And I think there's also some cognitive failure. People are neglecting cues. Ken talked about that. They're just not paying attention. They're inattentive. And, with information overload, as we see now, it's just difficult to pay attention to all the cues. So people are just overloaded and they're taking mental shortcuts. And I think we're just not keeping track of it all. And then I think we have the illusionary truth, where people are replacing fluency with fact. And they're familiar, the more familiar they are, they think it's fact. So if you hear 2 + 2 enough times, you believe that 2 + 2 = 4. Similarly, if on your news feed that one person posts that the earth is flat, yeah, you discount it. But if 50, 100, 200 people start posting the earth is flat, then all of a sudden that fluency, that repeated, the illusionary truth effect, people begin to feel that is fact. So it's really important. And, there's multiple studies out that the sharing of disinformation is very much like a virus. There's mathematical formulas that have proven this. And so when we think about things like the illusionary truth and fluency and people replacing that with fact, we want to flatten the curve, slow the spread, all those things we talked about during the pandemic, and we wish we never have to think about ever again. Play here, where we really want to flatten the curve, slow the spread, so people don't see, the falsehood 100 times in their newsfeed. We may not be able to get it down to 0, but we can certainly try to get it down so that illusionary truth doesn't take effect. And then you have some more, nefarious people, want to win praise from their in-group, or they want to support the elites in their tribe, and they want to look more attractive. They want to win the praise from their group. We all post and we look to see how many likes and shares we have. And there was an article in the New York Times several years ago about the purveyors of disinformation, and they asked them, did you know that was right or wrong? And said, we don't care. We got a lot of likes. And I think people are winning that. They're eager to have that praise. And they also want to own their outgroup. We want to own the libs. We want to own the conservatives. We want to punish them. And I think all these tribal aspects and these source cues come into effect. And you also have emotion. I think when we're in that heightened emotional state, we just make poor decisions. The wrong part of our brain is being activated. And Ken talked about using emotion to actually do that. So if we can get people in a heightened state of arousal, they won't think about it in a logical format. They will neglect those cues. They will avoid those that lack of critical thinking. So, it's very much, consuming information is no different than maybe consuming food and alcohol. On those stressful days, those are the days where you may have that second or third glass of wine, or maybe that's when you go for the extra hand in the chip bag. When you're in that emotional heightened state of arousal, that's when you're going to share and consume. And as Ken noted, the bad actors are out there. They exploit that. They take advantage and put you in that heightened state. They're rage farming. They're attempting to get you in that heightened state of arousal. And then obviously the worldview plays into it. Your partisanship, your personal views, your religion, some of the larger, bigger, better issues, not better, but the bigger issues start to shape how you see this. So as you can see, it's a pretty complex a mix of psychological drivers here, but I think we all have to understand the complexity here. So how do we mitigate this? What I'm going to do is try to tackle on 3 levels: the individual level, the organizational level, and the societal level. And I'll break some of those down. So on the individual level, I think, here we have a lot of agency. We have a lot of, we can have a lot of influence, whether it's that coworker, the people within, your organization, your community, your school, or even your cranky uncle, whoever that may be. In fact, there was a study out today about where people got their information in the last election, and a huge driver was from their peers. So if we're really looking to address some of the sharing and the spread of disinformation, certainly we're concerned about some of the digital sharing, but we want that person to person. So each person that has a better understanding of how to navigate the information landscape, the better off we will all be. Here in New Jersey, some of you may remember the clothing store Sims. And he had a tagline, an educated consumer is our best customer. And in many ways, the same thing is true here. So it starts with intellectual humility, openness, respect, flexibility, curiosity. This is really a big one, tolerating ambiguity. And I think if we can instill that not only in ourselves, but others about tolerating ambiguity and also just welcoming new ideas. I think, this is from Adam Grant, and I think this is a great one. And we've seen this all online, where somebody posts something online and all of a sudden we jump into that preacher, politician, or prosecutor mode, where we want to quickly tell everybody what to think, or feel, or do, or we're trying to, win an argument or trying to, attack somebody. And what Adam talks about is assume the role as a scientist. And that if we can just even visualize ourselves in that role and get others to think of themselves, we don't want to jump to the preacher, politician, or prosecutor, but we want to be the scientist. And I just that shift in mindset and reframing how you see things is important. And then there's also the steel man, straw man argument, and the straw man is when you present somebody's weakest argument. The steel man is when you start with, you make their best argument and you respond. So if they, somebody says, oh, youth sports are a waste of time, kids get hurt, it's no good, kids, it's just a lot of waste of time and energy. No one should be playing youth sports, building on Jen's little soccer analogy. But that would be a steel man argument. The straw man argument, we're like, listen, obviously there's a lot of costs with youth sports, and yes, kids get hurt. But overall, there's so many positive things that happen, and you list off the positives. So you actually made their argument for them at first, and then you knocked it down. So you let them know they've been heard. You let them know that you understand their point of view. And then by doing that, you start to level the playing field, and then they're much more open to your point of view. Again, these are powerful tools that can be done with coworkers, your community, others within your sphere. And, it's just simply building bridges is listening, managing your own emotions, gaining those insights, sharing your view effectively, and that's how you build that connection with others. And I think that's more important now as we, especially, and we're all dealing with the polarization going on in the world. And if we can all just find ways to do this better, I think it'll have a profound impact. So how do you do it on the organizational level? How do you defend your organization? And I'm going to start from the bottom up, some of the foundational elements. And, they were talked about here, some of the ethics, governance, and transparency. I think we've got to make those a commitment. Ken noted earlier that one of the goals of at least the PR Code of Ethics was to aid informed decision-making and our obligation to the consumers of news and information. And I think it starts with that premise. And Jen talked well about governance and having the systems in place so we can have the checks and balances and we can work collaboratively, and certainly transparency. But also trust, credibility, and relationship, and realize those are important intangible assets, some of the most intangible assets your organization has. And you treat them like an asset. In the military world, they may call them soft power. But make no mistake, they are power and they are an asset. So I think we have to understand them, measure them, really make that a priority in our organizations. We talked about that harmonization, collaboration, and psychological safety. We've got to work well across our various domains, and we've got to collaborate and again, harmonization. But psychological safety is key. And I think Jen alluded to it, that we all have to trust each other. And if people are afraid to bring something forward to the group, geez, that asset, I don't know where it came from. We want people to be able to speak up within an organization. We need those systems in place so we can address a lot of these issues. And without these underlying structural issues, we won't be effective. We need a good decision-making model, real-time listening and mechanisms to respond in real time and be able to understand. The decision-making model, there's one model that I've often used, the OODA loop by John Boyd, a military strategist. And he talks about observe, orient, decide, and act. And in many ways, really having those strong observation or orientation muscles in place. So you're tracking in real time what's going on and you can reorient quickly. Risk assessment, digital hygiene, and digital asset management. And Jen talked about the importance of that. And then training and simulation, gamification, red teaming, having systems in place so you can continually hone those skills and gain reps. This stuff is complex. It's complex, and you really need to build those muscles in order to address some of these issues. So your organization really should be investing in training, simulations, gamification, a great way, that experiential learning, red teaming, the whole thing. And then obviously then we get to the proactive communication, engagement, education, and then pre-bunking and debunking. And I'm going to get into both of those and because there is a difference. A great tool for those looking to mitigate disinformation. In 2020, during the pandemic, a bunch of behavioral scientists put out the debunking handbook. You can scan it here. And it was just a great kind of matrix on how to make a decision when and how to respond. So I'm not going to go into in full detail. But I'm going to break it down in the next slides. But one of the things that we're always concerned about in mitigating is the backfire effect. And that's where we're always afraid of giving it more oxygen. If we bring it up, are we just going to give it more fuel? And data has shown that, and I don't know if this helps anybody, but the backfire effect are not as common as we used to think, but it also can't be predicted. And I think there's an important thing. There's no silver bullet here. I talked about this orientation, the OODA loop. We're always trying to make sense of the world, and it's changing so rapidly. And we're living in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. So it's often difficult, if not impossible, to predict things. But I think we do have to have a good understanding of backfire, and certainly how it changes our decision making. But I thought this was just breaking down some key items. One, don't simply rely upon a simple retraction. The claim isn't true. You've got to provide an alternative. Remember, when people are building their narrative in their head, they're trying to make sense of the world. So they're kind of making mental shortcuts of what just happened, based upon their own experience and their own biases and their own pre-existing, notions of the world, their sense making. And so if we're gonna change that narrative, we have to be able to switch it out. We have to be able to provide something that fits in that puzzle piece just as well as what the original thought was. So you've got to be really aware of that mental process. So we just can't say no, it's not true. We've got to understand. We've got to create something that'll replace that puzzle piece. And it can't be just, it's the switching out has to fill that void. It has to be, and the alternative needs to be should not be more complex and should have the same relevance as the original misinformation. So that knowing how that all works is really key. And I think this represents one of the most powerful tools we have today in battling this and misinformation. During the Vietnam War, the U.S. military was concerned we were losing a lot of pilots, and there was a concern that they would be brainwashed by the Vietnamese. So they turned to a behavioral scientist, Bill McGuire, and said, how do we prevent our people from being brainwashed? How do we make sure that they're not manipulated? And he developed inoculation theory. And inoculation theory, and by the way, it's been replicated and proven in multiple domains, and so it's more than the theory now. It's got a strong scientific backing. Basically, it follows the vaccine metaphor pretty well. So we all go for that flu vaccine on an annual basis, or we should. And as we all know, what they do is give you a small dose of the virus so that your body can develop, it recognizes it. So then if it finds the flu in the real world, it says, oh, I know what that is. And it builds up that immunity. You're giving that small dose so it can build up the immunity. Inoculation theory carries is using the same thinking. If we can provide a small dose of the falsehood or manipulative technique, our brain will develop a cognitive muscle, a cognitive kind of immunity to that. And you think it sounds like crazy science, but I'm a big fan of legal dramas. And we've all seen, Law and Order and some of these shows where the defense attorney will get up and say, the prosecutor is going to tell you that my client's a bad person, and here's why they're wrong. They preemptively bring up what was going to be brought up, and then they can pre-bunk it. And that's this concept of inoculation and pre-bunking is really key. And one thing that's really important is with inoculation theory, we're not telling people to think or feel. And I think that's really important in today's world. I think there's a misconception that mitigation of disinformation equals censorship, equals deplatforming, and that's not true. I think what inoculation theory is giving people the tools to make better decisions. and the tools to understand and navigate the information environment. So that's really an important distinction. It's not about telling people what to think and feel. It's about kind of letting them see, pull back the drape, and let them see how the magician works. And then once you understand how the magician works, you're better able to navigate the world. And inoculation theory has been tested in multiple domains. JAMA, the Journal of American Medical Association, did a piece in May of 2024, and talked about how effective it was. The Lancet, and this pre-bunking technique. It's very difficult, and I think for those who are in PR or communication, and frankly any of us, I think we all realize that it becomes like whack-a-mole. You can never keep up. You can never scale up in time to start addressing the falsehood. So if we can start building this cognitive immunity in people, if we can preemptively start to understand not only the particular falsehoods, the particular virus we're trying to attack, but broad spectrum vaccines where people understand a variety of different techniques used to manipulate, we're going to build that immunity within our communities. And some of the ways they're doing. Oops, let me pause this.
You might think about skipping this ad.
Okay, sorry about that. So some of the tools that are being used right now, and if I go back, I'm afraid I'm going to start are videos. So Google's been testing successfully pre-roll, where they pre-warn people about about using emotion, as Ken talked about, or fake experts, or different fallacies, so then people can identify it. There's also gamification. The State Department, Department of Homeland Security, the World Health Organization have all started to use games and to help people. Basically, you play the purveyor of disinformation, and in doing so, you understand how the trick works. And then when you see it in the real world, then you understand and you have that immunity. Here's another really effective tool, is the truth sandwich, to inoculate with the truth sandwich. And this is something we can all do on a regular basis. So, we talked about the backfire effect. And one of the things, and I'm going to break this down a little bit. One of the things about the truth sandwich is we're adding more fact than we are fallacies. So we're not only countering the potential for disinformation, but we're also inoculating ourselves, if you will, from the backfire. So what is a truth sandwich? And I'll give you an example. Your child is going to middle school, and you tell them, listen, smoking is bad for you. It causes cancer, et cetera, et cetera. So that would be the fact. And then you warn them. When you get to school, some of the kids might say that if you want to be cool or invited to the parties or get a boyfriend or girlfriend or be one of the popular kids, you're going to have to smoke. And that's the warning and the fallacy. And I just want you to know that smoking is bad. It causes cancer, et cetera, et cetera. So, basically you forewarn them. So when they go to school and all of a sudden they hear, well, if you don't smoke cigarettes, you're not going to be cool. You're not going to be accepted. They've heard this. They've built the immunity up and they're prepared for it. And now, obviously, that the example I gave may call to question whether parents are seen as credible by their teenage kids, but that's a whole other issue. Some other interventions are nudges, primes, and prompts. And I want to share this. This is a really good tool source. Take that screen share, the website. It's a whole toolbox of interventions. And so it goes into inoculation theory, nudges, primes, prompts. So it breaks down how they work, the data behind them. Great tool. And I think all of us have to find ways to use them within our professional practice and our daily lives. And I think the society at large effect is key. And, I just want to bring this up. A lot of people say, what's truth? There's no such thing as truth. And, unfortunately, we heard that on both sides during this election. And we hear that a lot. There's no such thing as truth. And, as imperfect as they are, if you look at some institutions like law and science, they have found, again, as imperfect as they are, ways to at least come to some type of truth. And I thought maybe I can break down some of the ways in which they do it and ways in which we can then do it in the real world. So you look at rules of evidence. So the law has standardized rules. Evidence admitted based on relevance, admissibility, rules and regs. In science, they have empirical testing. Well, you know what? Everyday consumers, they can verify sources and their reliability. So we can have maybe not as rigorous, but have some of those same standards. In diversity of decision making. In the law, the juries and judges are chosen at random, and they have some, they try to have diversity of folks, and I'm not different types of folks chosen in different ways to kind of counterbalance any kind of bias. In the sciences, they do peer review and collaboration. Well, you know what? We can vary our sources too. We can then, instead of staying in our news hole, we can then diversify our sources. So maybe it's not as strong as a randomly selected judge or jury, but certainly we can use some of those same tools and techniques. And some other approaches, procedural safeguards like cross-examination, standardized processes. Obviously in science, they use scientific method. Well, you know what? We can check our own biases and understand how we think, and maybe even ask ourselves about our own biases, and at least admit we have biases. And then finally, a method for updating our beliefs. In the law, they have precedents and appeals. In science, they have new evidence, and then new theories are developed and new testing. I think we should develop some of those same ways to update our beliefs and our thinking using, a variety of different tool sets. So, people say, is there really truth? And I think there are institutions, again, as imperfect as they are, that have had to come and I think do provide some level of truth. And I think we can follow those standards and use those in our everyday life. And again, Jeopardy on a nightly basis. And one of the things people love about Jeopardy is the fact that it is truth. And I think there's a comfort in that, in knowing that. So I think that we should, we shouldn't run away from, again, always seeking truth and not be afraid to even talk about it. Also, I just want to talk about the importance of news and information literacy. Obviously, the Rutgers program is part of the School of Library Science. And kudos to the librarians out there who are investing a lot of time, energy, and their political capital to make sure that our students and the society at large has access to information literacy, news literacy. And just real quick about just one technique that we can all use right now. And people always question, can you really teach news literacy? And the one I always just give example about is lateral reading. So, you're reading an article on a website, you come to People for a Better America. And by the way, when you traditionally read an article, you read it from top to bottom. It makes sense. But when you're reading laterally, you read the article, see People for a Better America, and say, I wonder who they are. Open up a new tab, search for People for a Better America, see who they are, open a new tab, look at their board of directors, and all of a sudden you're gaining some context. You're gaining some understanding as you're reading that article. And again, that's just one tool, one technique. I just want to use that as an example of things that can be learned. And if people have always asked me, is there any hope? This seems like a lot. This seems like, biting, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? And there's a lot of stuff here. But what gives me hope is Finland. Finland has one of the most robust news literacy mandates and programs, and they've made it a way of life. And they border Russia, so they've been inundated with falsehoods. But it's been tested and proven that their media literacy, news literacy is far greater than ours. So Finland gives me hope that if Finland can do it, we can do it. And one of the other things that I like to bring up is critical ignoring. And you think about it, in all of humanity, we always were in search of more information. We were always looking for food or trying to avoid being eaten by the saber-toothed tiger. So we were always looking for cues and any information we could find to track down our prey or to look for that food or make sure we weren't being poisoned or eaten. But now we're in a state of information overload where we're being bombarded. And in fact, our adversaries are doing that on purpose. So now we have to actually learn a skill that our brains have never had to develop. And that's critical ignoring. And I think that's something we're all going to have to learn as we go forward. And I just close here real quick with, you can commit an injustice by doing nothing. And I know I've laid out a lot of different tools, techniques, and things that can be done, but we all have agency. We all have the ability to make a difference in our community. And for those of us who are practicing in PR and digital asset management or aspire to do so, we have an ethical obligation, an affirmative obligation to take steps to address these issues. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to David for some Q&A.
Great. Mike and Jen and Ken, thank you very much for the thoughts that you put together. It's a fascinating topic, and there's kind of resilience and echo and best practices all built in here. Hopefully some of the resilience is we're all not alone in this, in this, in these initiatives to discover truth in an era of suspicion and to hopefully get some practical ways to go about addressing this. So one of the questions that came in, and I'll ask this of everyone, could you share your observations about just general sentiment regarding AI and marketing? Just a kind of a general impression. What's the water level today? We're marking some, I think we are marking some early successes. Any policy observations that you might observe or share along that line? General sentiment about AI and marketing. And Jen, you drew the short straw, so you get to go first.
Sure. So I think that with AI, the most important piece is keep people in the process. Anytime you're using AI, keep the people part of the process. And a lot of ways that we've been seeing DAM and AI work together is to have company policies on AI, how it can be used, what systems can be used, how those systems are trained to be used, and also having potential sub-policies for the application usage, as well as company-wide usage. Where is that content going? How is it being utilized? How is it being tracked and recorded? How can you reduce your risk of AI? And then also make your best practices overcome the reputational issues with DAM for holding AI content, and kind of basically when you are looking at AI as a whole, what is the truth that lies around the corner for the DAM to be the enterprise application that withholds AI content? What are those policies and processes to align and make sure that when you are adding those to your DAM system, that you're confident, you're correct, and it becomes your digital truth within your policies for AI and how you're using it? So hopefully that helps a little bit.
I think as we all try to figure out where's the end of the spaghetti bowl in AI, that everything helps along the way here. And I think marking success to date is an important stair step in this, with all the hyperbole and overall generalized conversation about AI as the solution to what's the future of the universe. So, Ken, you drew the medium straw from your catbird seat. Some observations about general sentiment about AI and marketing specifically.
Well, within marketing, and you look at that, there are a lot of similarities with PR, corporate communication, et cetera. You need to, in my viewpoint, be transparent with your audiences. You know, remember that they're going to be determining, are you truthful? Are you an organization I have a lot of respect in that has not steered me wrong? And if in marketing, you're starting to use, let's say, AI video, deep fakes, trying to show, let's say, a celebrity using your product, you know, besides the fact that you'll probably get hit with a lawsuit from that celebrity, it's very misleading for your target audience. Now, they may think, oh, there's no way that the president of the United States would have, you know, used this brand of Windex or, you know, window cleaner. But still, you view it from the standpoint of, if it's believable, you should be transparent about it. If you're being incredibly fictitious and, you know, almost humorous, funny, you know, having, for instance, Abe Lincoln now representing your new car, that can work okay. But I think you really run into issues with, you know, believability. You know, we look at what's called PR governance as well, you know, which should give you a very brief, you know, definition of that. That's you're operating with the permission of your publics, you know, meaning your target audiences are giving you permission to sell your products and communicate. So if you break that trust, break that bond, it's very difficult to get back.
Right. Mike, I think I'm going to transition to something that you commented on a lot. We've had an interesting comment and a really difficult question shared with us. We have a comment that it's interesting to note that misinformation can affect different communities in different ways. And in combating it, we need to learn more about these communities and how to build and gain their trust. Then we had a extremely fascinating and difficult question come in. How do you just look at the gullibility? How do you address a critical question of validity in claimed facts? And you certainly talked about this. Look at the gullibility of accepting food claims. I will interject the hyperbole on a lot of labeling and packaging, like, non-GMO air, what's that? Will convince consumers that using population intervention comparator outcome assessment of seeming facts that are weak or false. And I know this could be the subject of a dissertation and an entire team, but it'd be nice to get your observation on those two questions, an observation and a question joined together there.
Well, I think, in all, as I noted, I think it's to understand the target audience and to always be thinking about the receiver of information, the chooser, the customer, the people on the edge. I think that's key. And certainly we've seen, for example, falsehoods being targeted not only at marginalized communities, but and Ken noted the hurricane. I mean, it was targeted during times of upheaval or crisis. During George Floyd, there was huge influx of falsehoods being posted on from Russia. And by the way, a lot of these bad actors, they're not picking a side. I think that's a misnomer too. They're just looking to see doubt and cause confusion, and they want people to lose trust in their institutions. So, but I think back to the question, we absolutely have to understand the different needs, wants, desires, fears of these communities and reflect upon that and provide the tools to help them do that. So that's part of the whole practice. And just, assessing truth and so forth. I mean, I think we unfortunately, we have primitive brains, and I don't mean that we're not a smart species, but, our brains were meant to make decisions with a lot less information. And now all of a sudden we've got to process a lot more. So I think we've got to develop new tools in our mental toolbox. I think we've got to, I know here in New Jersey, they're thanks again to the Library Association, we now have mandate for information literacy, where people have to take courses and how to make better, how to absorb information and make better decisions with it. And I talked about Finland, and unfortunately, without that training, without those skill sets, I just don't know if it's possible. I really, and I'm not saying people are dumb by any means, but I just think it's very difficult for our brains to try to get all this information, and the bad actors are exploiting it. So, and I do think I talked about, using the sciences and law, about how do I take the approaches they use and how do I localize it to me? And I think if we can all do that, unfortunately, there's no silver bullet here. I don't think we'll, people are jumping at all sorts of false claims and fake experts and all sorts of things. And it's a concern, and it's going to be a growing concern.
Great. I'm going to switch more to a couple questions that were sent to me that are a little more organizational in structure. I'm going to start with Jen and then pivot over to Mike and Ken about this. So Jen, you've worked in very large organizations, and you've sat at the helm of very large digital repositories that reach into many, many places in an organization. And what we're going to talk with Mike and Ken about is, have they seen DAM and public affairs operations join together? But Jen, for you, I have a public relations question for you. How do people find you? How do the people around a complex, large organization come to know that there is a place where the resonance of truth exists, where the resonance of authenticity exists? And we have an accommodation structure to offer our colleagues in public affairs an authenticated and digitally authenticated provenanced asset. How do people find you at public affairs?
People find me because I go find them. And that's actually how we have to look at the DAM perspective. We are the ones that have to reach out and say, hey, do you know about this? Hey, this is where your stuff should be. Hey, these are the policies and procedures. And one of the ways that we do this is through the governance committees. And currently, I reach out to a lot of people in different areas, different business areas. Any person who works for my same company that I'm working for, we can reach out to, and we should. We break down those barriers. We open the doors and say, hey, look, I'm a resource for you. Our committee's a resource for you. And we communicate it out to the broader audience so that when they have questions, they have a support structure to come back to as well. And I have done that in many organizations. And it doesn't matter how many people are on your team as part of DAM. It's the fact that you open the doors for that communication, that you reach out to them. And that's how we have to grow our DAM system, because at the beginning, DAM was just a standalone little piece of application sitting on the wall and didn't really interact with anybody. And now we interact with everyone. And like I mentioned before, we are the heart of the digital asset supply chain. And if somebody doesn't know about us, they're missing like their heart. We could be missing a limb. And how does that affect the entire workflow? And that's really hard to deal with. So we have to be those people that go out into the companies and be that presence for them. And sometimes it's really hard for DAM people to do that. But I think it's very important that this becomes part of our DAM role.
Yeah, I think embedded in that second to the last sentence you said there, where sometimes it is difficult for DAM staff. And some of you who have joined us today may work in organizations where DAM is seen as the librarians or the search engine, and we kind of prefer the latter. But librarians are not often trained in how to be a strategist and how to do this exteriorized outreach to go find others who can use this rather resilient and highly fungible application. So for Ken and for Mike, you are both highly skilled at articulating the need for and justifying the basis of one voicing for corporate messaging, corporate marketing. You're both highly skilled at giving counsel when there's a crisis situation that emerges. It was quite interesting in the paper last night or this morning to read about what happened with Warner Brothers when the wrong URL went out on the new movie and it went to a porn site. Oops. And how quickly Warner Brothers Discovery had to respond to that with authenticating our mistake. Here's the correct URL. But thinking about what Jen just said about her outreach and her own internal kind of public relations, have you been in circumstances where in your role as either giving coaching in a crisis, solidifying one voice as policy, which any of us who've worked in large corporations are used to, where DAM has been at the table and you could reflect on an experience like that or give guidance on that about how to remember where we go in an exigent circumstance or just in everyday work to reach out to our DAM colleagues. And Ken, I'll start with you.
Sure, I can. I'll talk a little bit about if you're a small organization and don't have the budget, let's say, to hire a DAM professional or a DAM person. What I've seen organizations do is there may be somebody that may have the role as art director, for instance, it's creating graphics, things like that, who may be that central source of keeping images. And you want a quote approved image for a social media post, you would talk with that person. Or some organizations, they may share around who has permission to go into your repository of images, videos, etc. As you start to get into larger organizations, you're probably looking beyond that type of a person where there's going to be somebody that might be, say, a central researcher that could go and play that role, but could also go and research and acquire different images or videos for you. And especially knowing they're going to be, having their radars out, will there be something that might be fake? And if you're looking for something that's fake, you let them know that as well, so they can do it. At a larger level, like with Jen's organization, it's really a function of the DAM person, as she said, going around, networking, letting people know I am here. But it's also good to make sure that she meets with the communication people, because they're going to probably be the person that hits send on an image or some factoid, etc. So it's good to have a team like that developed where everybody is at least aware of this. You know, I'm guessing there's some people that are on this meeting that didn't know a whole lot about DAM, but they know a whole lot about communication.
Mhm.
And it may not have been something that even crossed your mind, but there are professionals like this that can seriously help. So you're not making a misstep. You know, and that's kind of my viewpoint on it. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter if you're small or a large organization, you can build that in.
Great. Thanks for that. I appreciate your bringing the perspective in on organizations of all sizes. Something in the world of digital asset management is we need this application to assert truth, whether the end business goal is profit and loss or the end goal is what we refer to as mission and mandate, where we are measured by services we provide, charitable outreach, the experience of our cultural heritage and theatrical and performing arts, where all sizes of organizations need the calibration of, as you commented on. So, Mike, curious, have you been in a situation where you had the opportunity to be involved with an organization that did draw on either some policy or some other documents that were happily living in DAM in the occurrence of some kind of either a crisis or some planning that you were involved with?
Actually, I think my fear, and I think the biggest vulnerability organizations have is they're not investing as much or they're not collaborating as much when it comes to PR and marketing and advertising, even HR, all the different disciplines, and they're damn. I think that's a crisis in the making. And I don't think, you know, I just look at every organization now, you know, whether it's HR and they're, you know, always in the recruitment marketing and waging their own advertising or PR campaigns to get talent. Then you've got your marketing people, and then you investigate. All these different groups are using images and videos. And I find even some of the most sophisticated organizations don't have the level of of harmonization and collaboration, and they don't have that centralized point. And I think most PR people now can talk about digital hygiene and making sure their email addresses are safe and we don't have phishing and all this kind of stuff. But I don't think they're prepared for the manipulated images and how the things they're actually sharing with the world will then come back to bite them, you know where. And
Right. Thank you.
I think it is going to be a punch in the face to a lot of corporate, you know, Mike Tyson said everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. I think a lot of people in this world are going to be punched in the face but because they don't have good digital asset management governance, good digital asset management plans, and they're simply not prepared. And to their credit, they've empowered and enabled so many in their organization to share content and to their Facebook pages and Twitter and really to engage and connect and build relate. And it's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. But if you don't know where that image came from, and that, you know, Ken talked about that CEO who does their community walk, where all of a sudden there's a lapel pin on their shirt that they weren't wearing originally, and you need the original one to say that's not true. Where's
Yeah.
the original? Who has it? Who took it? Where'd they take it?
Yeah, I think that's a great,
You're
yeah,
done.
those are,
And so this is like, honestly, if there's any takeaway from this call, this is the crisis in the making for every organization. And you know, and David and Julie and we were at a meeting, and I won't say with who, but I left that meeting terrified when we had that discussion about these topics. And I think every organization should be terrified, to be quite honest.
We'll join you again soon for another Rutgers Colloquium, where we'll be asking what's next, but on a very different topic. Thank you, everyone, for your time and your interest today, and to our panelists. Much appreciated. Good day. This concludes our session today.